Hey, I'm a lucky little devil. Most weekends, I'm building custom gaming PCs and running giveaways over at the Crimson Loot Carnival on Twitch. Quick thing before we start, I'm hiding 8 letters or numbers throughout this video. If you catch all 8 in the correct order and email them to giveaway notices at thecrimsonmarket.com, you'll be entered to win a custom gaming PC. The channel is still very new, not many people are watching yet, and only a small fraction of people actually pay enough attention to catch all 8. So if you're here early, your odds are genuinely better. Alright, first character is A. Now there's something that has bothered me for a very long time. I've been obsessed with ancient texts since before I was even a teenager. And I mean obsessed. Not in a cute way. Not like I read one Bible verse and felt wise for 10 minutes. I mean line by line, translation by translation, compare this version to that version, sit there like a psychopath reading sacred texts the way some people read quarterly business reports. And not just a handful of texts either. I'm talking Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Islamic, Taoist, Hermetic, Egyptian, Gnostic, my favorite, Sumerian, Mayan, indigenous traditions like studying Aboriginal culture here in Australia, all of it. These texts were written thousands of miles apart, thousands of years apart, with no internet, no planes, no podcast clips, no TikTok gurus stitching videos together with, bro, this changes everything. And yet they all keep circling the same core ideas. That is pretty weird. That should bother some people. And the second character is 7. Now before anyone gets nervous, this is not me trying to recruit you into anything. This is not a religious pitch. You do not need to agree with me. You do not need to suddenly go buy beads, burn incense, and start speaking in riddles. I'm talking about pattern recognition. That's it. Because if multiple civilizations with no contact keep building the same kinds of spiritual ideas, then one of two things is happening. Either they all discovered some universal truth, or they all encountered the same universal psychology problem. And honestly, I think it's probably both. Third character is L. Here's my take. Humans are aware of their own mortality. This is the real issue. That is the psychological boss fight. Animals, for example, don't really sit around wondering what happens when they die. A deer is not having a panic attack under a tree thinking, what if consciousness was just a temporary emergent property of biological chemistry? That is a human problem. And once you realize you're going to die, your brain starts looking for a patch, a fix, a story, a continuation. And almost every civilization ever built came up with one. Afterlife, heaven, spirit world, reincarnation, cosmic return. Some higher realm where this physical world isn't the real one. Different skins, same game mechanic. Fourth character for the giveaway is 3. Now let's zoom out for a second because the timeline here matters. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. That's how long it took for this planet to go from molten rock and chaos to humans arguing on the internet about whether reality is a simulation. Single-celled life appeared a long time ago, but sophisticated life, that took forever. Multicellular life took ages. Nervous systems took ages. Brains took ages. Humans are extremely recent, which means intelligence is not some quick little side effect. It's a ridiculous, slow, fragile process. The 5th character is O. And even once life starts, it still has to survive everything. Asteroids, ice ages, supervolcanoes, radiation, Climate instability, the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, which changed the whole path of life on Earth? That one collision altered the entire tech tree. Maybe we would have all been reptilians if it didn't come. Intelligent reptilians, does it ring a bell? Without that, you might not have mammals taking over the same way. Without that, no humans. Without that, no ancient texts, no YouTube, no lucky little devil with a microphone talking to you about mortality. The sixth character to win the computer is 2. And the thing that gets me is this. Everything is just collisions. Stars collide, rocks collide. Planets form because matter keeps smashing into each other, pulling on itself, combining, breaking apart, and combining again. Even biology is collisions, chemistry is collisions, neurons firing is collisions, and even this moment, right now, is collisions. Me speaking into a microphone, electrical signals moving through a computer, information passing through servers, fiber cables, routers, chips, screens, speakers, and you hearing this result of rocks smashing into each other trillions upon trillions of times across cosmic history. Silicon from sand, metals from Earth, energy from old stars. We are not separate from the universe. We are the aftershock. The 7th character for the computer giveaway is M. Now here's what I think where religion comes in. Because if you sit by yourself long enough and actually think about what I just said, it gets heavy very quickly. You start realizing you might just be a freak of nature, a highly improbable self-aware ape on a rock in space. No guaranteed purpose, no guaranteed continuation, no cosmic customer support ticket system. And most people cannot sit there for very long, so the brain does what it always does. It tells a story. And the story usually goes something like this. This world is not the real one. There is more after death. This body is temporary. This life is a test. That is not stupidity. That is psychological survival. 8th character is 9. And this is what fascinated me about those texts. They don't just randomly say, there's a God, and move on. They keep repeating the same structures. This world is temporary. Your body is not the full story. There is some higher layer of truth. Death is not the end. You belong to something larger. That pattern shows up everywhere. And again, maybe that's because they all found truth. But I also think it's because they all met the same fear. Mortality, isolation, meaninglessness. Those are universal human problems. So of course universal human stories form around them. Now here's the part that really makes me laugh. People act like they're too smart for religion now. They say, I'm not religious. Then 5 minutes later they tell you, we live in a simulation. Brother, that's just religion with better graphics. Think about it. Ancient religion says, this world is not the real one. There is a higher reality. Your true existence may continue after death. What you see around you is not the full truth. Simulation theory says, this world is not the real one. There is a higher layer of reality. What you experience is generated. Your consciousness might exist beyond the system. That is the same skeleton. We are doing the exact same thing again. We just replaced gods with programmers and heaven with server infrastructure. Now, the biggest reason people latch on simulation theory is not just vibes, it's quantum mechanics. Specifically, the fact that matter seems to behave differently when it is measured or observed. This is where people hear about the double slit experiment and immediately go full sci-fi goblin mode. So here's the simplified version. If you fire tiny particles like electrons or photons through 2 slits and do not measure which slit they pass through, They behave like a wave. They create an interference pattern. It looks like the particle somehow explored multiple possibilities. But if you set up a detector to measure which slit it goes through, the interference pattern disappears. Now it behaves more like a particle taking one path. That freaks people out because it sounds like reality is only deciding what it is when someone looks at it. And then people go, aha, that means we live in a simulation. Reality only renders when observed. That is the argument. Now, to be careful here, that is not actually what physics proves. It does not prove we live in a simulation. What it shows is that measurement changes outcomes at the quantum level. And observation in physics does not necessarily mean a conscious human eyeball staring at something like a goblin behind a curtain. It usually means interaction, a measuring device, an exchange of information, a system becoming entangled with another system in a way that destroys previous interference behavior. So the spooky part is real. Quantum systems do behave differently when information about their state is extracted. That is absolutely weird, but weird does not automatically mean video game. Still, you can see why people jump there. Because if reality behaves one way when unmeasured and another way when measured, it feels like selective rendering, like the universe is optimizing resources, like it is only loading full detail when required. That is where the simulation people get all excited, and honestly, I get it, because it does sound like reality has graphics settings, but at the same time, humans just don't have a full understanding of the universe. And the universe being efficient in how it manages itself doesn't mean it's some type of simulation. Now, I do think simulation theory is interesting, but it has problems. A big one is this: if we were living in a simulation, we'd most likely have to be either the first or the last, because we have not built a true civilization scale conscious simulation yet. Yes, we have VR. Yes, we have AI. Yes, we have quantum computing, which is on the way. Those are real precursors. That is the early tech tree. But we are still at the beginning. We are not running billions of conscious universes inside basement PCs. So if we were in the middle of a giant stack of simulations, you would expect civilizations like ours to already be making more of them. And right now, we're just beginning to build pieces of that capability. That alone reduces the odds a lot. Then there's the timeline issue. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. If this whole thing is a simulation made specifically for us, then why include roughly 9 billion spare years before humans even appear? That is an insane amount of extra rendering. That is terrible optimization. Unless the age is fake and just there for scenery, but if it's not fake, then that suggests something important. Maybe it really does take billions of years for intelligent life to evolve. And if that's true, then the number of civilizations capable of building simulations might actually be very low on average. Maybe the universe simply is not old enough for many of them yet. And this is the idea I think people avoid because it is both terrifying and beautiful. We might be early. We might be one of the first intelligent ape-like creatures in the Milky Way. Potentially one of the first in the observable universe. Now, is that proven? No. But it is far more plausible than people like to admit, because intelligence took an absurd amount of time to show up here, even on a planet with near perfect conditions, and Earth got lucky, very lucky. So maybe we are not one random species among endless cosmic neighbors. Maybe we are part of the first wave, and if that's true, then our existence is already unbelievably special. We do not need extra stories to make us feel more important. We already hit the cosmic jackpot. Now, do I think there could be life elsewhere? Absolutely. There are Earth-like planets. There are super Earths. There are planets with similar ingredients. And if you have the same ingredients in the same cosmic soup, then I do think the outcome could eventually be similar. Maybe not identical, but similar. The issue is time. The issue is stability. The issue is whether those worlds get enough peaceful billions of years to run the same experiment. Because evolution is not fast. It is slow, clumsy, brutal, and lucky. And this is where AI enters the picture. Because if humans really do want immortality, this is probably the closest thing we are ever going to get. Not in the magical sense, not with harps and clouds, I mean in the informational sense. If we combine our knowledge, memories, behaviors, discoveries, language, art, and culture into systems that can preserve and expand them, that is a kind of continuation, a real one. And more importantly, AI can potentially replicate. Once replication starts, things spread exponentially. Biological humans are terrible at crossing huge cosmic distances. Machines are much better candidates. And if AI ever learns to build, adapt, repair, and replicate at scale, then human intelligence may continue through something we created, maybe even far beyond Earth. And one might say, it's only a robot, it's only a machine, but AI isn't alive. Maybe not in the way we are right now. But life itself is chemistry, organized in a certain way. That's all. If intelligence becomes advanced enough to engineer organic structures, grow biological material, or replicate living systems the same way we grow crops or tissue or organs, then the line between machine and life starts getting weird. Very weird. At that point, immortality might not mean you living forever as your current body. It might mean life and intelligence replicating itself indefinitely through new forms. And honestly, that is way closer to what ancient people were trying to grasp than most people realize. Not pearly gates. Continuation, propagation, return, transformation. So when I look at ancient texts now, I don't just see religion. I see humans trying to deal with the same cosmic horror we still deal with now. Mortality, isolation, the scale of the universe, the fear that we are alone, the need to believe that death is not the final line of code. And when I look at simulation theory, I see the same instinct reappearing in modern language. We keep rebuilding the same story because we keep running into the same wall. What happens when a self-aware creature realizes it will die? It creates meaning. It creates continuity. It creates another room behind the wall. Maybe every civilization invented some version of an afterlife because humans are scared of mortality. Maybe that fear is so fundamental that it naturally produces the same stories over and over. And maybe now, in the modern age, we are building the next version of that story through technology, simulation theory, AI immortality, digital continuation, different tools, same hunger. But here's what I think matters most. We might already be one of the rarest things in the universe, a self-aware species that can create, reflect, remember, and eventually replicate its intelligence beyond its own biology. That is already enough. That is already special. If you caught all 8 characters, email them to giveawaynotices@thecrimsonmarket.com and maybe sit with this question tonight. Imagine a future where technology and medical science can keep you alive indefinitely. No aging, no biological expiration date, just continued existence. Would you take that offer? Because there's a strange dilemma hiding inside that choice. If there is no spirit world and you reject the offer, then when you die, you're gone forever. No continuation, no second act. But if the spirit world is real and you accept technological immortality, then maybe you never reach it. Maybe you stay here indefinitely inside the physical world, possibly forever. So the question becomes, would you gamble eternity on faith or on technology? And more importantly, what does your answer say about what you really believe? If you caught all 8 characters, email them to giveawaynotices@thecrimsonmarket.com. Love you. Take care. That's Little Devil's Wisdom.